My friends, Iran has just signed a piece of paper that has the military and economic potential to set the world on fire in the next 72 hours. But the response from the United States did not come from diplomats in suits giving speeches in air-conditioned offices in Europe. The American response came in the form of titanium fire and 40,000 tons of raw naval steel, silently gliding through the tense and dark waters of the Arabian Sea. Pay attention because this is serious. While you watch this video in the comfort and safety of your home, an expeditionary force made up of more than 2,200 US Marines from the legendary Camp Pladdington has their finger on the trigger, ready for what could turn into the largest and deadliest amphibious operation of our decade. Their immediate goal is not to invade the sands of the Persian desert, but to break through brute force and ballistic intimidation, a mafia law that the Iranian parliament has just written. We're not talking about a conventional diplomatic chess game. What the Tehran regime is trying to build in the Strait of Hormuz is what we're going to call here an eagle's guillotine. A mechanism of absolute maritime control where Iran unilaterally decides who breathes, who gets through, and who bleeds in the global economy. And to understand how the Western world came to the brink of logistical collapse, we need to reverse the logic of the news and look at the war machine that Washington sent to crush this bravado. Imagine the scene in a raw, technical, and visceral way. Close your eyes for a second and visualize. You are on the flight deck of the amphibious assault ship USS Boxer, operating under unbearable heat in the middle of the ocean where the smell of burning aviation kerosene fills your nostrils. And the sound of the turbines is so intense that it can make the bones in your chest vibrate. Right in front of you, a 5th-generation stealth fighter, the F-35B Lightning II. It's not just accelerating on a traditional runway. It's defying the law of gravity. The rear engine nozzle of this monstrous machine rotates 90 degrees downward, directing more than 18,000 kilograms of volcanic thrust straight against the steel deck, melting and shattering the special anti-thermal paint as the fighter rises vertically into the heavy air before shooting up into the stratosphere. This is historic engineering, STOVL in action, the short takeoff and vertical landing that transforms the USS Boxer, which isn't a supercarrier. Nuclear aircraft carrier, by the way, but a Wasp-class amphibious ship into an aircraft carrier, stealthy, lethal, operating exactly at the right spot, staying hidden from the enemy. Are you enjoying it so far? Did you get the point? The Boxer is not alone. It leads a steel belt, which includes the ship's USS Portland carrying the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit. The primary and brutal mission of this class of ships has always been just one: flood the lower deck to launch armored landing craft and put heavily armed troops on a hostile shore under heavy fire. That's why the tilt rotors of the MV-22 Osprey helicopters cut through the night air, capable of infiltrating special forces into the heart of enemy territory. In total darkness, combining the advanced speed of an airplane with the tactical landing of a helicopter, this MV-22 Osprey, in my opinion, is one of the most fascinating machines in the American military arsenal. If you're enjoying this, leave a comment here. Look at the level of power projection, my friends. It looks like an absolutely invincible naval force, right? From what Shimon described, from the strength he put into his words, it sounds like the war is already won. No, my friends. It seems like the outcome of this conflict has already been decided by technological superiority, but we need to keep our feet on the ground and let go of the idea that the war is already won. Because Iran firmly believes it has the ultimate antidote against American power. And this antidote isn't made of enriched uranium but of self-destructive legislation based on pure economic desperation. Iranian planners, in a move of blind arrogance that surprised global military analysts, decided it will turn state piracy into international law, demanding that even United States warships like the Colossal and the SS Boxer, loaded with their radar-invisible fighter jets, request written and official permission from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. To transit in waters that have always been international, you need a free pass signed by the Ayatollah to move the largest fleet on the planet. But the legislative delusion goes far beyond military sovereignty. Iran is trying to legalize the operation of the Eagle Guillotine, creating an international tax extortion scheme. The new preliminary law establishes absolute and non-negotiable prohibitions for ships from the United States, Israel, and any other nation that will be arbitrarily classified as hostile. And it charges a mafia-style fee of 7% on the total value of any cargo passing through the Strait, imposing a brutal and immediate fine of 20% in case of non-compliance or attempted evasion. Understand the math of the collapse in your pocket and on your table. Approximately 20%, if you follow me here, you know that. 20% of all the oil transported by sea on the planet must pass through this narrow passage every day. If a commercial supertanker carrying 2 billion barrels of oil is forced to pay a toll of 7% on the colossal value of its cargo, the impact on the price of a barrel on the stock exchanges is instant and devastating. Global inflation drives up the price of gasoline in your village, in your neighborhood. By the way, how much is gasoline costing there? There, at your home, at the gas station in your city, it would reach historic highs. Freight becomes more expensive, affecting global logistics, and the food on the shelf would double in price overnight. Iran is trying to create a wartime transit toll. A few days ago, according to leaked diplomatic information, it seemed that a deal mediated by the Sultanate of Oman was practically closed, where ships would enter through a corridor north of the Iranian coast and exit through a corridor to the south near Oman. The global financial market breathed a sigh of relief, and the price of a barrel of oil dropped immediately. But the Hardline transit faction, feeling that it was losing narrative control, tore up the drafts of this agreement, and it introduced new aggressive legislation that gives the regime total power to decide who passes, who pays, and which ships should be blocked and seized, something the Iranian regime cannot enforce and guarantee through its naval forces. They are trying to steal through legal fraud and by institutionalizing maritime hijacking. For comparison purposes, it's the same thing as Alexandre de Moraes in Brazil, giving an order for the Brazilian Federal Police to arrest Donald Trump for applying the Magnitsky Act against the justice of Brazil's Supreme Federal Court. Basically, that's what Iran is trying to do, my friends, and Washington's response was blunt, military, and ruthless. No authorization, no transit permit, and absolutely no toll will be paid. Iran is a vital international artery and no one controls the flow except maritime law, while the bureaucrats in Tehran shout and waste ink drafting laws that no one will follow. The American blockade, led since June 13th by the oppressive presence of these thousands of tons of amphibious steel, has already intercepted, diverted, or prevented the advance of 49 strategic commercial vessels. And this surgical naval strangulation is draining from the Iranian regime's coffers approximately $500 million per day, $500 million evaporating every 24 hours. They are choking on their own poison, trying to use a piece of letterhead to stop a war fleet. You are not going to obey me. I am Alexandre de Moraes. And before we move on to the dark core of this conflict, I need to make a direct appeal to your conscience. If you think this topic is already the vital political issue, if you understand the brutal impact that our mechanisms have on our daily survival, and you want more Brazilians to have access to this level of information not filtered by the system, support this video now, use super thanks, super like down below, or become an active member of the channel. Because our analytical frontline depends exclusively on those who refuse to be manipulated by shallow narratives. Based on that, we need to dive into the abyss of the Iranian leadership. If you believe the strategic issue of Hormuz is resolved, it just boils down to extorting shipping tolls. Wait until you find out what's happening right now, in the darkness and the deafening silence of the impenetrable bunkers of Tehran. What the Western press completely ignores is the frightening power vacuum that has taken over the central command of Iran. The supreme leader, the central figure who holds divine, political, and constitutional authority over every missile, every ship, and every soldier in the country, has practically disappeared from the public scene. He did not attend the presidential succession ceremony. And the state guidelines are only being published as isolated statements in the state media without anyone seeing the face of the person who supposedly signs the orders. But Masoud Pezeshkian, the president of the country, confessed to reporters that he cannot reliably contact the man who has the final say on all agreements, including the vital negotiations with Oman. And this is exactly where the false American sense of victory falls apart and asymmetric military terror comes into play for real. When the top leadership vanishes into the shadows, the chain of command collapses. Yes, the Revolutionary Guard, the infamous IRGC, starts acting autonomously like warlords in their own coastal fiefdoms. And we're not dealing with a regular army following a code of conduct. We're dealing with radical generals in southern Iran who, seeing the weakness at the top, might decide to launch preemptive ballistic missile attacks or swarms of suicide drones against merchant ships, simply to force the payment of tolls and fill their own pockets. And don't underestimate the lethality of their arsenal. Iran has vast naval minefields and advanced anti-ship missiles hidden in caves along the Strait. A single naval mine, which costs just a few $1,000s, can tear apart and sink an American destroyer that costs billions. This fragmentation of command is the most fertile ground for apocalyptic miscalculation. And the key to understanding the insanity behind the closure of the Strait lies in a forgotten confession from July made by Iran's own foreign minister. He admitted that since the genesis of the regime, there was a tacit agreement that if the supreme leader were directly targeted or the subject of a political or military decapitation operation, the Strait of Hormuz would be completely sealed off. Pay attention to the scale of this strategic absurdity. The Eagle's guillotine, capable of paralyzing the world and holding back 20% of all global oil, was not created just as an economic weapon to break sanctions. It was forged as a personal life insurance policy tied to the survival of a single extremist man. And this brings us to the most lethal and fascinating irony of current geopolitics: a monumental retaliation policy that depends exclusively on the orders of a man whom no one can find. He is a ghost, and Iran is desperately trying to pass laws to force the international community to accept its extortion. Because the commanders of the Revolutionary Guard are terrified, losing control of the waters they promised to dominate. While the man who holds the power to cancel this catastrophe lives like a stealthy ghost, more invisible to his own ministers than an F-35B fighter jet is to enemy radars. This paranoid defense doctrine based on shielding the head of state is not an isolated delusion in the world. Just look almost 10,000 kilometers east of Iran, to the island of Taiwan, where last Wednesday night, President Lai Shinti was evacuated in the darkness and placed inside an armored military vehicle, preparing for a surgical strike by the Chinese army. Dictatorships and democracies all over the globe are on high alert for the annihilation of their leaders. But in the Iranian case, their life insurance could implode the global energy system. The dark chess game of Hormuz has now entered its terminal and irreversible phase. The Iranian regime tries pathetically to legitimize a structure of state piracy by drafting paper tolls that have no validity outside the walls of Tehran. But the United States, well, the United States, through the silent and overwhelming presence of its Marines and the cutting-edge vertical takeoff technology that melts away. The decks of the USS Boxer have already decreed that there will not be any concession at all. The naval blockade not only continues, it intensifies, imposing a daily hemorrhage of $500 million on the regime, which is already on life support. As the regime remains unable to provide the basics for its own people while burning fortunes on terrorist arsenals spread across the Middle East, the F-35Bs continue their intimidating patrols, digitally illuminating all Iranian naval targets and vital infrastructures, with a precision and stealth that Tehran's obsolete air defense systems can't even process on their radar screens. We are all walking on an extremely sharp razor's edge, swaying dangerously between the silent capitulation and dishonor of the Islamic Republic, which will be suffocated by the weight of bankruptcy and internal popular revolt, And the terrifying scenario where a disobedient and fanatical commander of the Revolutionary Guard loses his head and fires the first missile, unleashing uncontrollable tactical hell. The big geopolitical question that will dictate the course of the world economy in the coming weeks and months is not whether the US Department of Defense will give in or pay this extortion fee. Because it's obvious that the United States Navy does not negotiate navigation rights with state terrorists. The ultimate question that echoes over the dark waters of the Arabian Sea is what happens at the exact moment when the American fleet solemnly ignores this paper legislation and crosses the imaginary line drawn by Iranian desperation. Will Tehran be rational enough to swallow its own humiliation in front of the world, or will fanaticism speak louder, forcing the fall of the Eagle's guillotine and making the tens of thousands of tons of steel of the Wasp-class amphibious ships respond with a storm of sustained live fire? If you can see the profound gravity of this global chessboard, and if you understand perfectly how this insane dispute over a shipping route directly affects the cost of living, inflation, and your own financial and strategic survival, you have the duty to take a stand now. Go scroll down right now to the comments section. Show the algorithm and the world that you are part of a minority that thinks and leads. And firmly type the 2 keywords that represent the final verdict of our elite analysis tonight. Type legalized extortion and eagle guillotine. I repeat, legalized extortion and eagle guillotine. Let's game the algorithm and pay close attention to this operational alert. We are navigating through a dark and turbulent election period. Do you agree? A time when the establishment tries at all costs to silence dissenting voices. And they could very well decide to block, censor, or ban this channel without any prior warning. We will not accept being brought to our knees. That's why we immediately activated our backup contingency channel, Bunker Digital Blindado, in case this main channel goes down or suffers any attack. We already have a tactical structure ready to continue the mission. The name of our backup channel is Shield Your Mind. What do you think? Did you like it? Shield Your Mind, yes! You can point your phone's camera right now at the QR code that's showing up on your screen, or you can click directly on the official link, which I pinned in the first line of this video's description and in the pinned comment. Subscribe now to our backup channel and turn on all notifications to make sure you'll never be cut off from our stream of intelligence. My friends, cowardice retreats before preparation. The sand and steel storm in the Middle East will not retreat. Iran has set up a legislative trap that they themselves don't have the courage to execute, and the American Marines don't usually ask for permission, and not from governments nor from ghosts. To navigate the waters of the world, prepare your mind, because the global game does not forgive the inattentive. And the strategy of choking the flow doesn't just happen in the Strait of Hormuz, it happens every day. When it comes to your company, pay attention to what I'm about to say. In military chess, the invisibility of a stealth fighter is the greatest possible tactical advantage, but in the free market, for your business and for your knowledge, invisibility is a death sentence. What hurts the soul of a top entrepreneur or professional the most is knowing they have the best offering, the best technique, but they remain hidden. While mediocrity goes viral and makes millions, your excellence remains isolated in the dark. Are you waiting for the algorithm or the market to give you permission to grow? Understand the harsh reality. Just like the American fleet doesn't ask for permission to sail, you can't ask for permission to be seen. You need to project overwhelming authority. And today, the most ruthless currency in the world isn't a barrel of oil, it's people's attention. Building irrefutable authority requires substantive content and killer distribution. And with 50 million views every month here on social media, our method is mathematically proven on the digital battlefield. Your identity cannot be outsourced. The leader has to lead from the front. And everyone who did this in recent years has at least tripled their revenue. And if you want to break this invisibility, break out of the bubble, August 16th is the day. I will host a fully in-person immersion face-to-face with me at my studio in Curitiba. But I'm being honest with you because there are only 2 spots left, so hurry up because when the last one is filled, the steel door closes. And I don't know when we'll have another opportunity. Face to face with me, no theories, no wasting time. I'll share with you what I actually do in practice. monetized in dollars. Now I have a visceral series that premiered last week, and the first episode is about the war between Ukraine and Russia. The client environment turned out great, no whining tough, no poking or woke culture, and the tip is there on our channel with tips on series and movies. I'm leaving the link for you in the first pinned comment on the card and also in the video description. Want to get early access to videos? You can become a channel member or join our intelligence bunker, where we already have more than 3,000 members. Elite analysts who fund the content we bring you. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like the video because it takes a lot of work to make it. Now blind, shield your mind. I'm Shimon Oliveira, and I'll see you next time. Until then.